In this tutorial I'm going to go through how to create a simple character and get them to move across the screen to the sound of some music. To start off, just open up Flash and create a new ActionScript 3.0. The character that I am going to create is just a simple snail. If I show you the character now, it's a very basic character with a simple shell, a main body, an eye and some antennas. So I'll go back to Flash. I'm going to save my file. I'm just going to call it snail. Firstly, before I create my character, I need to insert a new symbol. Make sure the type is a movie clip and rename your symbol to your character name. I'm going to call mine snail and click OK. The stage and the screen changes because you're now in editing mode. Down in the layers, I only have one layer at the moment for my snail. I'm going to have 4 parts. There's going to be the main body, the antenna, his eyes and his shell. So I'm going to rename this his main body. I'm going to add in 3 more layers. I'm going to rename the next layer shell. Rename this layer antenna. And the next layer I'm going to rename eyes. So I'm going to click on my main body layer. I'm going to lock all the other layers by clicking the little dot under the lock symbol. This prevents me from editing anything on these layers without knowing to myself. For drawing my character, I'm going to use the pencil tool. I'm going to turn my stroke to a dark green. And I want to use my fill as the same colour. So now they're matching, and in my properties I can see here. So I'm going to draw my main body shape of a snail. You can notice how it's not really straightening out anything, so I'm going to undo that and I'm going to change it down here to smooth. This will help you if you have a shaky hand or don't really like drawing using a mouse. So I can do this, and I'm going to make it a longer snail body like this. I'm going to get my bucket tool and I'm just going to fill it in to make sure it's a closed shape. So now it's filled in. You can touch it up by using the brush tool just to make it a bit curvy. Now I'm going to lock this layer and I'm going to select my shell layer and unlock it. I'm going to use my brush tool. So I'm going to change my fill colour to a dark red purple colour. And I'm going to create my shell. This is only the outline, so I'm going to get my bucket tool and I'm going to change the colour to a lighter colour so you can see it against the outline. You can change it to whatever colour you like, just make sure it stands out. Now I'm going to resize my shell a small bit, so I'm going to just select everything. And using the free transform tool, which is Q, is the shortcut on the keyboard, I'm just going to rotate it so it's kind of slanted there. And I think it's a good size for my shell, so I'm just going to lock that layer. And click on my antenna layer, make sure you unlock it. Pick up the brush tool again, and I want to make the colour the same as the snail's body. So I'll bring over my eyedropper here, which allows you to select a colour from the stage. And you notice how it goes to the same colour. So now I can draw my antenna onto my snail. Just fill it in there quickly. And I have an antenna. And I can draw another one on the snail. Again, doing the same technique, just fill it in quickly. Doesn't have to be anything perfect. And that's my snail. That's his antenna done, so I lock that layer and I move on to his eyes. So I unlock it. Again, I have my brush tool selected. So I change my fill color to white. And I give him an eyeball, so to speak. You can just fill it in quickly. And after this, I'm going to change the fill color to black. And I'm just going to give him a pupil so that he looks like he has a face. And I'm going to lock that layer. So now that I have my character created, it's a simple character, I'm going to click on scene 1, so it brings you back to the main stage. I'm going to save my work so far, so go File, Save. You'll notice now on the timeline that there is nothing there, so if you want to bring over your character, you go into the library and just drag it onto the stage. So I'm going to pick up my selection tool and I'm going to position him over to the right. He is very big for my stage, so if I get my free transform tool and hold down my shift key on my keyboard, you can click and drag and resize him. Now I'm going to have him to walk down a leaf, so I'm going to position him at a slant and I'm going to draw my leaf to match my snail. I'm going to rename this layer character and I'm going to add in a new layer called background. You may notice that the background is above the character, so I'm going to click and just drag it down below because you want the background to be at the back of the character. I'm going to pick up my selection tool. I'm going to change the fill to a lightish dull green and I'm going to draw a leaf shape. Make sure it's a closed line, otherwise I cannot fill in the line with my paint bucket. To make sure it's a closed shape. So that's my leaf shape. I'm just going to give it some detail by changing the colour to a brown and giving it a stem. Again, make a closed shape and get the paint bucket tool and just fill in the bits of the shape like that. Now that I have my leaf and I want to maybe put in some different lines onto it to give it some definition, so I can put in some, you can undo any mistakes you make, put in a line. If you wanted to in your animations, you can always go back and change these things at a later stage. I'm just going to put in a line there behind the snail as well. So I'm going to lock my background layer so that I don't accidentally edit anything on it. I'm going to select my character layer. I want my character to move from here down to here. I'm going to do this by editing my snail in my symbol. So I'm going to double click on it in the library and I've gone back into editing mode. I'm just going to zoom out so I can see what I'm doing. On frame 1, I'm going to unlock everything and I'm going to go to frame 150. I'm going to insert a keyframe. So you can right click and insert a keyframe. I'm going to do the same for all the layers down along so that all the parts are together. And I'm going to go back to frame 1, just select it on the timeline. I'm going to move all my character by selecting everything with my selection tool. I'm going to move it over to the right. I'm going to come down to frame 150 and I'm going to click on the timeline. I'm going to select everything and I'm going to move it over to the left. So you'll notice how he moves that much. You can move him even further if you like by just dragging him over. The further you move him over, just the longer the distance he will go. If you want to make it move slower, you can add in more frames in here, or you can make him go shorter by removing frames from the timeline. So in order to get this snail to move, I need to put in a tween. I'm going to use a classic tween, just because it's just a simple movement and there's no changes going on with the shapes. So if I bring the playhead back to the start of the timeline, and I press enter, my snail is moving across the screen. So if you want to show this happening over the background, all you do is you make sure you position it at the start of the leaf, and you press Control and enter, and my snail is now moving down along my leaf. You can edit the way he moves by pressing the Free Transform tool and maybe rotate him a bit so that he is actually going the right direction down the leaf, and you can press Control and enter again to test that he is moving down the leaf. So now that we have our animation going, we want to add in some sound. So I add in a new layer and I rename it Sound. Because in my library I have no sound file, I only have a symbol for my snail and tweens. These tweens are what make the snail move, so try not to delete any or move them around because these are what make them work. So I'm going to import my sounds. I go File, Import, Import to Library. I'm going to find my music file. I have it saved on my desktop. It's just an MP3 file. And I press Open, and it will bring it into my library. So I make sure I'm on my sound layer, and I click and drag my sound over. The only problem I have at the moment is I have no time left for my sound. My animation is 150 frames long, so I need to insert a frame at 150 to give time for my sound. So I do the same for all the layers. I just insert a frame. So that they're all there for 150 frames. So I select my sound layer, I lock my character layer, and I bring over my sound. You just click and drag it over onto the stage. And you'll notice that the blue line is the sound wave line, and it shows up along the length of your sound layer. So there is sound available for 150 frames. If you want to hear the sound, you just test your movie with Control and enter. And it shows up the sound.